They mocked my career choice for years. At Dad's 70th birthday, I finally showed them the document that proved I was right all along. You won't believe their reactions. The elegant restaurant buzzed with laughter and conversation as my family gathered to celebrate my father's 70th birthday. Crystal glasses clinked, servers glided between tables with steaming plates, and the soft glow of chandeliers cast everyone in a flattering light. From the outside, we must have looked like any other happy family celebrating a milestone. But beneath the polished veneer of smiles and small talk, I felt the familiar undercurrent of tension that had defined my relationship with my family for the past decade. I checked my watch, 7:45 p.m. In exactly 15 minutes, I would change everything. So, Alex, still doing that internet thing? My Uncle Gerald's booming voice cut through my thoughts. He waved his whiskey glass in my direction, his face already flushed from alcohol. Must be nice playing around on computers all day while the rest of us do real work. Several family members chuckled. My father, the guest of honor, smiled tightly but said nothing to defend me. He never did. It's going well, thanks for asking, I replied evenly, taking a sip of water to hide my annoyance. After all these years, I'd perfected the art of the pleasant mask. Tonight would be the last time I'd need to wear it. What is it you do again? Something with videos? My cousin Melissa asked, her tone suggesting she was merely humoring me rather than expressing genuine interest. I create educational content online, I explained for what felt like the thousandth time. I teach people how to invest, manage their finances, and build wealth. Right, those little YouTube things, Uncle Gerald interjected before I could continue. My neighbor's kid does that too. Films himself playing video games or something, says he's going to be rich. He let out a dismissive laugh, looking around the table for approval. My sister Emma shot me a sympathetic glance from across the table. She was the only one who had ever supported my unconventional career path, even if she didn't fully understand it. Next to her, my brother James, the golden child with his prestigious law firm partnership, barely concealed his smirk. Actually, it's a bit more structured than that, I began, but my father cut me off. Let's not bore everyone with the details, Alex, he said, his authoritative tone silencing me instantly. Even at 70, Harrison Reynolds commanded respect, his silver hair and tailored suit embodying the traditional success he had always valued. James was telling us about the Morgan acquisition his firm is handling. Biggest deal of the year, isn't that right? And just like that, the conversation pivoted away from my embarrassing career choice to the safe territory of James's accomplishments. I watched as my father's face transformed, pride radiating from him as James detailed the complex legal maneuvers of his latest corporate triumph. This was the familiar rhythm of family gatherings. My siblings' conventional successes celebrated, my unconventional path tolerated at best, mocked at worst. 10 years ago, when I announced I was leaving my stable job at an investment bank to create online financial education content, my family had reacted with a mixture of horror and disbelief. My father, who had spent 40 years building a respected accounting practice, couldn't comprehend why I would throw away a real career for what he called playing on the internet. My mother had cried, asking where she had gone wrong. James had laughed outright, predicting I'd come crawling back within 6 months. Only Emma had said, "If that's what you want, Alex, I hope it works out." It had worked out. Beyond any of their imaginations. Beyond even my wildest dreams. But they didn't know that. To them, I was still the family disappointment, the cautionary tale, the one who had thrown away potential for a pipe dream. Because I had kept my success a secret, I glanced at my watch again, 7:55 p.m. 5 more minutes. Alex barely touches his food at these dinners, my mother stage whispered to my aunt. Probably can't afford to eat out much these days. I bit back a retort. The truth was, I owned a stake in this very restaurant, along with 12 others across the country. The maitre d' had nearly blown my cover earlier by greeting me with too much deference. I'd tipped him, generously to maintain my charade for one more night. My brother was now regaling the table with stories from his recent vacation in the Maldives. The overwater bungalow alone was 5 figures a night, he boasted. But some experiences are worth the splurge. I thought about the private island I'd purchased in the Caribbean last year and took another sip of water. The server appeared at my elbow. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" she asked quietly. "Perfect timing," I murmured back. "Could you bring the special item I left at the front now? And the champagne?" She nodded discreetly and disappeared. My heart began to race. I had planned this moment for months, rehearsed it in my mind 1,000 times. The document inside that innocuous manila envelope would shatter the narrative my family had constructed about me, about success, about what constituted a worthwhile life. Was I being petty? Perhaps. But after a decade of snide remarks and pitying glances, I needed to reclaim my dignity. More importantly, I needed my father, just once before it was too late, to look at me with pride. The server returned carrying a silver tray with the envelope and a bottle of champagne I knew cost more than my brother's monthly mortgage payment. She placed both beside me with a knowing smile. "What's this?" my father asked, conversation at the table dying down as curiosity took hold. I stood up, suddenly calm. The moment had arrived. "Dad, before we bring out your birthday cake, I wanted to give you a special gift." I picked up the envelope. "Inside this is something I've wanted to share with you. With all of you. For a long time." My father's expression was guarded as he accepted the envelope. "You didn't need to get me anything extravagant, Alex. We know your situation." Those words, "your situation," were the final straw. The gentle, measured reveal I had planned crystallized into something sharper, more decisive. "Open it, Dad. Please." With deliberate slowness, he broke the seal and pulled out the contents. A financial statement from one of Switzerland's most exclusive private banks, and a recent feature article from Forbes magazine with my face on the cover. His eyes widened as he scanned the document, confusion giving way to disbelief. This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his reading glasses. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I said, my voice steady. "That's my current net worth. And the magazine explains how I built my company, Financial Freedom, from a YouTube channel with 100 subscribers to the largest online financial education platform in the world, valued at just over $2 billion last month." A collective gasp rippled around the table. James nearly choked on his wine. "2 billion?" my father repeated, his voice barely audible. "I have over 20 million subscribers across my channels now," I continued, finally allowing myself to speak freely about the empire I'd built. "The app has another 30 million users. We've expanded into investment management with a fund currently overseeing assets of $12 billion. I own significant real estate globally, including a stake in this restaurant and the building that houses your law firm, James." My brother's face drained of color. "But you make YouTube videos?" Uncle Gerald sputtered, his earlier condescension evaporating. "I create educational content that changes lives," I corrected him. "I teach financial literacy to people who never had access to that knowledge before. My courses have helped thousands of families escape debt, build emergency funds, and secure their retirements. And yes, I've become very wealthy doing it." Emma was beaming at me from across the table, tears in her eyes. She had always believed in me, even without knowing the full scope of my success. My mother reached for the magazine with trembling hands. "Why didn't you tell us, Alex? All these years." I took a deep breath. This was the hardest part. "Because you made it clear you weren't interested. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you changed the subject. You assumed I was failing because my path didn't look like yours." I looked directly at my father. "I wanted you to be proud of me because of who I am, not what I'm worth. But after 10 years, I realized that might never happen unless I showed you this." My father stared at the documents in his hands, his expression unreadable. The restaurant seemed to have gone silent around us, though it was likely just the rushing of blood in my ears drowning out all other sound. "I don't understand," he finally said, looking up at me. "Why live in that small apartment? Drive that old car? Let us believe you were struggling all this time?" It was a fair question. The truth was complicated. At first, I was just focused on building the business. Every dollar went back into growth. By the time the money became significant, too much time had passed. You'd all formed your opinions about my choices. I shrugged. And honestly, I was hurt. I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need your approval. James, recovering his composure, leaned forward. "So all those times we offered to help you out. I was already earning more in a month than you make in a year," I finished for him. It was petty, but satisfying nonetheless. "I accepted those dinner invitations where you insisted on paying because it seemed important to your ego, not because I needed the free meal." The server chose that moment to return with my father's birthday cake, complete with sparkling candles. The jarring juxtaposition of the celebratory dessert with the emotional revelation unfolding at our table made several people laugh nervously. After an awkward rendition of Happy Birthday, during which my father seemed miles away, lost in thought, the cake was cut and distributed. No one ate much. They were too busy processing what they'd just learned, sneaking glances at me as if seeing a stranger. Uncle Gerald, predictably, was the first to recover and attempt to capitalize on the situation. "You know, Alex, I've been thinking about investing more for retirement. Perhaps we could set up a time to—" "Gerald!" my mother cut him off sharply. "Not now." My father still hadn't spoken. He kept looking between the financial statement and me, as if trying to reconcile the son he thought he knew with this revelation. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I think I owe you an apology, Alex." The table fell silent again. "No, Dad, that's not why I—" He held up his hand, stopping me. Let me finish. I've spent my entire life believing there was only one path to security and success. The same path my father taught me. A respected profession, a steady climb up the corporate ladder, a gold watch at retirement. He gestured to the documents. You showed me there are paths I couldn't even imagine, and you walked one of them, alone, without my support or understanding. My carefully constructed composure began to crack. This was more than I had hoped for. I'm sorry I didn't listen when you tried to explain your vision, he continued. I'm sorry I measured your worth by standards that were already becoming outdated. Most of all, I'm sorry I made you feel you needed to hide your success to spare my pride. Tears pricked at my eyes. I just wanted you to believe in me, Dad. I should have, he said simply. I see that now. Emma reached across the table to squeeze my hand, her own eyes glistening. Even James looked genuinely moved, the rivalry of decades momentarily suspended. So, my mother ventured, wiping her eyes, are you secretly living in a mansion somewhere? The tension broke as everyone laughed. A penthouse in the city and a beach house in Malibu, I admitted, but I still drive the Honda when I visit you because I knew Dad would lecture me about flashy cars if I showed up in the Porsche. My father actually chuckled at that. You know me too well. The rest of the evening transformed into something I hadn't experienced with my family in years. Genuine conversation. They asked real questions about my business, my life, my accomplishments. For the first time, they listened when I explained how my platform worked, how we created and distributed content, how we monetized, how we measured success. James, ever the lawyer, wanted to know about my corporate structure and tax strategy. Emma was fascinated by the educational aspects of what I did. My mother simply kept shaking her head in wonder, occasionally reaching over to touch my arm, as if making sure I was real. As the night wound down, my father pulled me aside. In the quiet corner of the restaurant's bar, away from the rest of the family, he seemed smaller somehow, more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. I missed so much, he said quietly, swirling the scotch in his glass. 10 years of your life. Your greatest achievements. All because I was too stubborn to see beyond my own narrow definition of success. It's not too late, Dad, I told him. I'm still here. My life is still unfolding. He nodded slowly. Would you show me? Your work, your home, this life you've built that I know nothing about. I'd like that, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. How about next weekend? I can send the jet for you and Mom. He blinked. You have a private jet? Fractional ownership, I clarified. More cost-effective for my usage patterns. A smile spread across his face. Listen to you. You sound like me explaining depreciation schedules when you were a kid. He shook his head in wonder. You really did it, didn't you? You built something remarkable, completely on your own terms. I did, I acknowledged, allowing myself to finally feel the full weight of that accomplishment. But I never wanted to prove you wrong, Dad. I just needed to prove myself right. He raised his glass. To being right, then. And to me being gloriously, wonderfully wrong. As we clinked glasses, I felt a decade of tension begin to dissolve. The document that I had brought to vindicate myself had done something far more valuable. It had opened a door that I thought had been permanently closed. The changes that followed my revelation at my father's birthday dinner were both swift and profound. Within days, the family dynamics that had been calcified for a decade began to shift and reorganize themselves around this new reality. My mother, unsurprisingly, adapted the fastest. Within a week, she had devoured every article ever written about me or my company, joined all my social media channels, and begun proudly informing strangers that her son was a digital entrepreneur and philanthropist. The speed of her transformation from concerned parent to enthusiastic supporter was both touching and slightly amusing. James took longer. Years of sibling rivalry doesn't evaporate overnight, even in the face of undeniable success. When I invited my parents to visit my penthouse the following weekend, James engineered an invitation for himself. I didn't mind. In fact, I had expected it. I still remember his expression as he stepped off the private elevator into my living space, 40 stories above the city with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a panoramic view that had cost me as much as some people's entire homes. This is something else, he managed, taking in the modern art on the walls, pieces by artists whose names he recognized from museum exhibitions and auction house records. The art collection alone is insured for 8 figures, our mother informed him proudly, having absorbed this fact during her research binge. James wandered through the space like a man trying to reorient himself after discovering the world wasn't flat after all. When he found my home office, a state-of-the-art studio setup with equipment that rivaled professional broadcast facilities, he finally began asking genuine questions about my work. "Show me," he said, gesturing to the setup. "I want to understand what you actually do." And so I did. I showed him how I planned content, how I researched and constructed lessons that broke down complex financial concepts for everyday people. I played him testimonials from viewers whose lives had been transformed by gaining control of their finances. For the first time, my brother saw my work as real, substantive, and valuable. "I had no idea," he admitted later that evening as we sat on my terrace, the city lights sparkling below us. "I thought you were just, I don't know, giving generic advice anyone could look up online." "Most people don't look it up," I explained. "Financial literacy isn't taught in schools. Millions of smart, capable adults have never learned the basics of how money works. I give them the knowledge and tools that were previously accessible only to people like you and Dad." He nodded slowly, a new respect dawning in his eyes. "And you built a billion-dollar business doing it. I'm impressed, Alex. Truly." Coming from James, those words meant more than I cared to admit. My father's transformation was the most profound. The man who had dismissed my career choice as frivolous now watched my content with rapt attention. He created accounts on every platform where I published, consuming years of back content like a student cramming for an exam. 2 months after the birthday dinner, he called me with an unexpected request. "I want to learn how to do what you do," he said without preamble. "What do you mean, Dad?" "The videos, the teaching, I've been thinking. I have 40 years of knowledge about small business accounting that could help people. Not on your scale, of course, but maybe for local businesses, startups." I was momentarily speechless. My father, the traditional accountant, who still kept paper ledgers as backups to his computer files, wanted to become a content creator. "Are you serious?" I finally asked. "Completely," he replied. "I've been watching how you explain complex concepts, break them down, make them accessible. I could do that for basic accounting principles, if you'd be willing to show me how to get started." And that was how, at 70 years old, my father became the unlikely star of Small Business Sense. The dad joke of a name was his idea, and I didn't have the heart to veto it. We set him up with simple equipment, taught him the basics of recording and editing, and helped him outline his first few episodes. His delivery was stiff at first, his manner more formal than contemporary audiences were used to. But there was an undeniable authenticity to his approach that resonated with viewers. Small business owners appreciated advice from someone with decades of real-world experience. Within 6 months, he had a modest but engaged following and had developed a genuine passion for his new endeavor. "I never understood before," he told me one evening as we finished editing his latest video, "the connection you feel with your audience, the satisfaction of knowing you've helped someone you've never met. It's addictive." I smiled. "That's why I couldn't give it up, even when everyone thought I was failing." He placed his hand on my shoulder. "I'm glad you didn't listen to me." The document I had dramatically revealed at his birthday, the proof of my financial success, had opened the door to reconciliation. But ironically, it was this shared experience of content creation that truly rebuilt our relationship. For the first time, my father and I spoke the same language. We had common ground that went beyond DNA. Emma, who had always been my emotional supporter, became my professional ally as well. With her background in education, she had invaluable insights into learning styles and curriculum development. What began as casual suggestions evolved into a formal role consulting on educational design for my platform. "I never imagined we'd work together," she confessed over lunch at my office one day, watching my team of 60 employees bustling around the open concept space. "But this feels right somehow." Even Uncle Gerald eventually came around, though his transformation was less about respect and more about opportunism. His attempts to leverage our newfound close relationship into investment advice were transparent but harmless. I directed him to my company's free resources like any other user, which he reported to be surprisingly helpful, despite his initial disappointment at not receiving special treatment. The most unexpected outcome of my revelation wasn't the changed family dynamics or even the professional collaborations that emerged. It was the profound effect it had on me personally. For years, I had carried the weight of my family's disapproval and misunderstanding, letting it fuel both my drive to succeed and my detachment from them. I hadn't realized how exhausting that burden had been until it was lifted. With nothing left to prove, I found myself working differently, more purposefully, less frantically. I delegated more, trusted my team more fully, and even took my first real vacation in nearly a decade. A month in New Zealand with no content creation schedule, just exploration and rest. 6 months after my father's birthday dinner, we gathered again at the same restaurant. This time there was no hidden agenda, No secret document waiting to be revealed. Just a family dinner that felt, perhaps for the first time in my adult life, genuinely comfortable. As we waited for dessert, my father raised his glass. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced. "To Alex, who had the courage to follow his own path even when none of us understood it, who built something remarkable and changed not only his own life but the lives of millions of others through his work. And who finally showed up his big brother," James added with a self-deprecating smile, raising his own glass. "To Alex," they chorused. I felt a swell of emotion as I looked around the table at my family. The document that had changed everything 6 months ago was now just a memory, its work complete. It had served its purpose, not just proving I was right all along, but opening the door to something far more valuable. A family that finally saw me for who I really was, and, miracle of miracles, actually liked that person. "Thanks," I said simply, raising my glass in return. To family, the ones who are there at both the beginning and the end of the journey, even when the middle gets a little complicated. My father caught my eye and nodded, a world of understanding passing between us. We had both been wrong and right in our own ways. He had been wrong about the path to success, but right about the importance of persistence and excellence. I had been right about following my vision, but wrong to shut them out of it for so long. As we lingered over coffee and dessert, making plans for my father's new content series and debating the merits of different investment strategies, I reflected on the document that had changed everything, the proof of my success that I'd kept hidden for so long. Its true value hadn't been in the numbers it contained, impressive as they were. Its value was in the conversations it started, the doors it opened, the healing it initiated. Sometimes the most powerful documents aren't contracts, or deeds, or certificates at all. They're the ones that finally allow the truth to speak for itself, that bridge the gap between who others think we are and who we've actually become. They're the ones that let us say, after years of doubt and dismissal, "I was right all along, and now you see it too."